Now we come to 11. Now, Councillor Leopard, you're stepping out.
If I may, Chair, for the interest of fullness for members of the public who may not be aware, if I may read the pre-prepared statement just briefly before I recuse myself. Chair and members, in relation to ISO 11, yesterday I received email correspondence from Mr. Phil Barrow, who kindly got in touch and made representations about this application. I dutifully replied and CC'd the Head of Development Management, and in the interest of openness, declared this in accordance with the Planning Code of Good Practice. Furthermore, following my conversations with the monitoring officer, due to my position as a committee member of Harlow Civic Society and their submission as an external consultee on page 88 of the report, I must recuse myself from voting on this planning application to prevent the impression of a conflicted interest and or predetermination of this application.
Thank
so
you
if
very
I may,
much.
I will.
Thank you. You're doing this for me? Okay.
Thank you, Chair. Planning permission is sought for the redevelopment of land relating to number 4 Wych Elm. The application seeks to demolish the existing single-storey building, which is currently occupied by Rick Gym, and replace it with a building ranging between 6 and 15 storeys. It would comprise commercial floor space at ground level with 84 flats above, alongside communal amenity space and cycling parking. So number 4 Wych Elm is located at the northern edge of Wych Elm, which is also within Harlow Town Centre. The site is approximately 0.1 hectares. The site is bound by a cycleway to the north that runs parallel with the building. Number 3 to the west, which is in use as an office, in light industrial use to the south. And number 5 Wych Elm to the east, which has recently received a resolution to grant permission for an 11-storey building comprising 53 units. Number 6 to 10 Wych Elm, also to the west, are also in use as commercial uses and a place of worship. Number 10 Wych Elm has also recently obtained a resolution to grant permission for similar development with commercial floor space at ground level and flats above. In terms of local plan designations, the site is within the town centre boundary, as identified within the local plan. A woodland TPO covers the entirety of Rectory Wood to the north. There are no statutory designated heritage assets, and the site is in flood zone 1. And these are a couple of images of the existing site at the moment. So I'll just go through the key planning considerations. The first one's the principal development. The Wych Elm area is not a designated employment area, and as mentioned, it's within the Harlow Town Centre and forms part of an opportunity area of the Harlow Town Centre Master Plan framework. It's considered an appropriate location for ground floor commercial uses with residential development above. It's also suitable for higher density development, including tall buildings. The Wych Elm development brief, which is a supplementary planning document, sets out a similar vision for the area to be a place for mixed-use development, and the site itself is specifically earmarked for residential development with ground floor commercial floor space in a building between 6 and 15 storeys. A variety of unit sizes are proposed, with the highest proportion being 1 beds and 2 beds, which are suitable for a town centre location. Also, there's a proportion of studios and family-sized 3-bed units included in this proposal. All units would meet national space standards and offer a good standard of accommodation and private amenity space. There's also communal amenity space proposed at 1st and 11th floor levels. Regarding affordable housing, it has been proven that it's unviable to provide affordable housing on the site or as a commuted sum, and the applicant's viability has been reviewed by our own consultants and agree with this conclusion. Therefore, an early stage review mechanism negotiated and to be secured via the Section 106 agreement will determine the level of contribution prior to the development commencing, and that is in line with the local plan and SPD requirements. In terms of design, as mentioned before, it's a staggered building and it's considered acceptable at the corner plot in Wych Elm. The tallest elements would be located along the eastern and northern edges and step down towards the west and south. This approach is supported. It would be a horseshoe shaped, centred around the communal amenity space at 1st floor. The building is designed to make effective use of a small site, and it does consider the relationship with neighbouring sites. And it's to be constructed using modern materials, including white concrete and grey and green masonry. And there's also linear vertical emphasis, which is very common with Harlow design. The ground level would provide residential and servicing access with commercial floor space and parking at ground level. And the urban design officer and planning officer themselves are content with the final proposed design in terms of its height, bulk and massing. It also meets fire safety planning requirements, and it's also been considered acceptable by the designing out crime officer. There's limited space for landscaping, but the proposals would improve the boundaries with new paving, planting and trees along the northern, eastern and southern edges. We introduce green roofs where the blocks terminate, as well as additional planting as part of the communal terraces. Space is also allocated on the eastern elevation at ground level for public art. There's no objection raised by the trees officer, and the landscaping scheme and its management plan would be conditioned. The development would be largely car-free, with adequate levels of parking restrictions in the area, and it would help to reduce the number of vehicles in the area. The exception here would be an inclusion of 13 parking spaces, of which 3 would be accessible. There would be a total of 112 cycle spaces. There's been no objection from Essex County Council Highways, given it's a town centre site and in a sustainable location. And it's worth noting that the parking levels on this application exceed what was accepted on number 5, which was car-free, and number 10, which only had 3 spaces. There would be a condition imposed on this one requiring the developer to offer the right of first refusal to the occupiers of the largest units in the first instance. And the applicants dealt with waste matters, and a loading bay would be provided. Just quickly on the other matters, no concerns raised by environmental health. The use class, the commercial floor space will be restricted between 7 a.m. and 11 p.m. The proposed development would be compatible with number 5 Wych Elm in terms of daylight and sunlight. It would achieve an estimated 65% reduction in regulated CO2 emissions, and would introduce air source heat pumps and PV panels. It would also introduce a sustainable urban drainage system and green infrastructure improvements and biodiversity net gain compared to the existing site. The scheme offers a number of financial obligations, as mentioned, the early stage review for affordable housing, and money there for the NHS integrated care system, money towards the sustainable transport corridor, early years and childcare, the ambulance services and libraries. And then these are just some of the images showing the materials. A couple of other CGIs, and that's from the south. So just to summarise, it's the redevelopment of a brownfield site within the town centre, has an adopted vision to be redeveloped into a mixed-use area with commercial floor space and homes above. It's suitable for a tall building up to 15 stories. It's considered to be well designed using high quality materials and would complete the planning process for the 4 corners of Wych Elm. The applicant has agreed to an early stage review mechanism and would offer a substantial package of financial benefits, and therefore it is recommended for approval subject to conditions and the signing of 106. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Phil Barrow. Evening. Press the red button, please. 3 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. I'll speak on behalf of Daniel Robinson's funeral directors, who's objecting to this, as they have done all the other developments in Wych Elm. First of all, for this particular development, can I just talk about the car parking? On the first application, there was 10 spaces, and that was refused on the grounds of lack of car parking. Now there's been an additional 3. If you just make note that number 5 and number 10 have also just been granted permission. So potentially, with the 3 developments, that's 194 units with only 16 parking spaces. Also new to the development has just been built, which has and still continues to be a problem. And I'll come on to that in a second. In all the applications, it comments that given the close proximity to transport links, it is expected that dwellings would encourage those with no cars. How is this going to be policed? Are they only going to be sold to people without a vehicle? Average cars per household is 1.2. However, in London, it's 0.3, which is a similar area taken into consideration for good local transport. That said, 0.3 in this area would still need 58 spaces between the three buildings. There's only 16s. Comments made by your own regeneration team in the original application was that they was disappointed that it was only 18% allocation of affordable housing. This time, there's none. In terms of health, in the first application, it stated that there'll be a contribution of £40,000. However, this has doubled now in this application to £90,000. Nothing has changed. There's still lack of provision, and even more so given that number 5 and number 10, Wych Elm, again, the strong grounds for refusal, which was refused upon last time. In total, the 3 units had an additional 433 patients to the local surgery. Schools in the original application, sum of 367 was allocated. This time, all it is 34,000 because suddenly there appears that there's adequate primary and secondary schooling, which actually was compensated by nearly 300,000 last time. In terms of the highways, there's a severe lack of parking, what I've just said. The recent development has created long problems for us. Delays in our vehicles getting out to go on to funerals. A lot of our funerals actually start with the bereaved starting from our office. So if they're sitting there for 10 minutes waiting for a lorry to unload, that's not acceptable. And basically, just to sum up, the grounds it was refused on last time, as far as we can see, still stands. And I think it's been summed up by 104 on your pack, which says the proposed development, if approved, would complete the 4 corners of Wych Elm and act as a catalyst for further regeneration in a sustainable location, which goes to prove our point that the council want to push us out of Wych Elm. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Danielle St Pierre. Hello.
Hello.
3 minutes.
Thank you. Good evening, Chair, members. It's nice to see you all again. We've come to the committee a couple of times this year so far, and also a couple of years ago for the redevelopment of Wych Elm House. I'm pleased to say that those, the 2 developments at 5 and 10, you were very kind enough to recently grant planning permission for, and are underway looking for developers in order to be able to move forward for the construction of those to enable the regeneration of the area to kick off, coupled with the redevelopment of Wych Elm House, which was undertaken recently and to a very high quality. I hope you agree. I think just responding specifically to the points raised by the objector, what's fundamentally changed since the last time this application was heard is that you as a council have adopted a town centre master plan and a Wych Elm development brief that specifically seeks for these developments to be car-free, given the proximity to the station, the fact that the cycleway runs along the back of the site, which looks fantastic, by the way. I don't know if you've been down there recently, but they're relaying all of the tarmac, adding lighting, etc. That takes you straight through to the station. It's fantastic. All of the redevelopment round at the roundabout as well is, again, to facilitate that sustainable method of transport. So I think that's the fundamental difference between the application that you see in front of you today and the one that was refused well over 2 years ago now, so it was a while. We've worked really hard with officers over a number of years in order to make sure that these 4 developments are complementary of one another and look to achieve the goals specifically for the Wych Elm development brief. The Wych Elm development brief allocates this site for a redevelopment for 6 to 15 stories, which is exactly what is in front of you today. it seeks for it to be car free. We've minimised the car parking as much as is possible to align with those requirements of your own adopted master plan. In respect of the affordable housing point, I think that people will have seen what's happened in the industry generally over the last few years. But what we're looking to do is to secure an early stage review mechanism so that when the development is commenced, you get the opportunity to be able to review that affordable housing provision again. That is baked into the Section 106 agreement, and you will get the opportunity to do with that. Coupled with the fact that there are substantial contributions, £90,000 for the NHS, £25,000 for the ambulance service, £6,000 for libraries, £35,000 for local schools, and £68,000 towards that sustainable transport corridor, which I've just been speaking about, which is helping to make the site more sustainable in transport terms. As I mentioned, this is the next phase of what we hope to be a comprehensive and high-quality redevelopment of the Wych Elm area, which is a designated part of the town centre and is part of the council's future housing supply. So I hope that you'll be able to support the officer's recommendation this evening and recommend for approval. Thank you.
Right on cue. Thank you very much. Members, questions and clarifications? Councillor Tuto.
Thank you, Chair. I've heard about Daniel Robinson's because I was on the first one, which I wasn't very happy when the first building was. How will this affect? How can we put some regulations in that make sure that Daniel Robinson's are not affected regarding funerals?
In effect, we can't do that. We have to consider each application on its own merits, and we're considering the impact on this. What happens or what may not happen to that business in the future is outside of the consideration of this application. This application will not impact on that business continuing to operate. But what happens in the future in terms of their business is not a matter for this application to be considered today.
Yes, I had intended to ask a question very similar to the one that we've just heard. What happens to the local businesses? And we have heard previously, and we've heard again this evening, that there are anxieties already because of building operations. Sometimes funerals are delayed, cars cannot leave the area. That could well become, the situation could become exacerbated. And I think that concern is completely understandable. So the Robinson business, I think, hopes, that's my interpretation, I may be wrong, to be relocated, but it would have to be in a suitable situation. So our answer seems to be that business doesn't need to move at all. Is that correct? There is no need for the business to move.
The development of this site, and indeed the other sites that have come forward previously, can operate in tandem with that existing business. So if they want to move, or there's discussions, that's outside of this planning application and this discussion, but they can operate together.
And Councillor, just to come back directly to your point regarding construction, you would have noted there's a construction method statement that we're securing by condition 6 as a part of this application, and that's to minimise any, or as much as we can, because it would be disingenuous to argue the point that construction works do not cause disruption. It does, but the condition is there to try and minimise impact as much as we can.
Just worth adding as well that that will require to be discharged. So Daniel Robinson would be consulted on that and would be able to review that document and make comment on that at a later stage.
Thank you. Another couple of questions. Predictably, I suppose the vexed issue of viability, and that has been referred to, that is with regard to a contribution to affordable housing. That's an issue that is mentioned a couple of times, and we are told that a viability review will be conducted. So when does that happen? What determines that?
So it would be it's called an early stage review mechanism, and when the Section 106 is negotiated, it would be required. There's various triggers, I believe, that it can be imposed at a specific time. So, do you know when
So that level of detail, Councillor, in the round will be dealt with when we're dealing with the Section 106 agreement. So this application is before members to be agreed subject to a legal agreement. And when we're dealing with the heads of terms and the minutiae, that's when we deal with the early stage triggers.
And it was what was imposed on 5 and 10 as well.
Yes. I think I asked that same question before, exactly in the same context. My third question is about the green roofs. I'm interested in these green roofs. Do they appear on the drawings, on the plans? And is maintenance of those green roofs included in the conditions? Because there's reference to them, but there's not direct reference to maintenance of those green roofs.
In the plan, there's sort of flecking on the tops of the roofs where they terminate, and there is which condition it is now, but it's a part of the landscaping condition. There is a requirement.
Condition 19.
Condition 19. So it says, prior to first occupation, a landscape and green roof management plan which details the maintenance management shall be submitted and approved in writing. Number 19.
So maintenance will be built into that. They won't just run wild or die off.
Correct.
No, Councillor, we're acutely aware of the problems that arise with green roofs, so we're being very meaningful with our conditions here.
There is something else, Chair. I take it there's no need for a condition covering construction working hours, because we didn't have that previously. I think we agreed that it wasn't necessary given the location.
That would be included within the construction management plan, so the working hours would be included within that document. They'd be the standard hours as we've attached previously.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quickie, has anybody spoken to Stansted Airport about how, because it's going up to 15 levels, sorry, because the flats are going up to 15 levels, is that going to affect them coming over? Because they seem to be coming over a lot lower nowadays than what they used to do. Has anybody been in contact with Stansted Airport?
Yes, Stansted Airport are a statutory consultee, and there is, if you look at condition 30, it says during demolition and construction, robust measures must be taken to control dust and smoke clouds, and there's also an informative there regarding cranes.
Is that once it's built, is that not going to affect the flight paths?
So we have consulted Stansted, Councillor. So if you look at page 88 within the report, there's a little section there that says that we've spoken to or consulted Stansted. Yeah. And those are their comments in the round, raising no objection. So they would have considered the application in the round, not just the construction works. They would also consider the resulting development. So I understand where you're going with this. You know, does the height of 15 stories impact any flight paths? Yeah. And this would suggest no. And I can also confirm, Councillor, I've had personal conversations with them, and the resolution is fine.
Not a few things, just, you know, it's another piece of the jigsaw, isn't it? You know, regenerating the town centre, and the design for me is looks good. You know, I know it's difficult when you're building a square block, but at least it's stepped down, so you get the different areas. But yeah, I think it's taken 2 years to get where we are today to agree it. We've got the early review mechanism, which is we're doing it all the time, I think, nowadays. Otherwise, we wouldn't get anything happen. And you know, we get our affordable housing in the end, but we don't get it up front. So you know, I'm fully inflated. So if we go to no more debate, no. So go to the recommendation, which is on page 105, which is to approve the application. All those in favour? It's unanimous.